Hello everyone and welcome to another Dwarven Tavern video. Talk. That wasn't an order, I'm telling you what it is. We are talking this time about character wills. Okay? I am your host, Dr. Jeff Goins, and with us is the 5/6 of the Tavernier crew.
I am Lyric Goins.
I'm Ian Goins.
I'm Dr. Lisa Goins.
Lisa Goins.
And when your character dies, what happens to his or her or its stuff? Well, that's a very good question. In order to more effectively role play, we have found, and we've actually discussed this because as the Taverniers go on about their business that is beyond the gaming table, we find it necessary to play at great distances, which I actually just wrote a blog about that on www.dwarventavern.net. It will be soon. And game at great distance, or if a person has to leave the group for whatever reason, what happens to their character if their character dies, or if the actual player, God forbid, should die or
just never come back,
or whatever. What happens to all that stuff, and what happens to their character's legacy? And we discussed this at great length, and these are some of the things that not these guys, but this whole concept is what we came up with.
Okay. So a quick question: why do characters need wills? Because in so many cases, when one person fails to show, the gaming party just falls apart. So what are some cases where you would actually go through with executing a will?
Well, there were some cases in a lot of campaigns that I was in that they would, a lot of characters wouldn't show up again, and more often than not, if it was just one or two people, we just played without them. And those two characters just stayed where they were left, like in a village or...
Yeah, just kind of phase out.
Cardboard cutouts. Yeah, so I think if those are higher level characters, then I think that's when a will would come into play.
Yeah, because when the party is old enough, it's like if you've got 15th to 25th level characters, and all of a sudden the paladin doesn't show up. It's like, what do? Yeah. It's like, we follow Paladin.
Paladin was going to be the guy that killed the big guy with the wings? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
Oh, no. That's my barbarian.
Through no fault of their own, the party members get separated forever. They literally go on two different paths, and they never ever reconnect. So,
that happens a lot. That's actually a death sentence to a lot of gaming groups.
Yeah, actually, some of the games that we have had, somebody just doesn't come back or goes into the military or something,
and we can't play that anymore because so and so's gone, or so and so's a
away.
douchebag and we don't want him back, or whatever. You kick them out, or they quit, or they lose interest, or whatever. There's a lot of they go to college. They just don't have time for it anymore.
Take another job in another country.
There are as many reasons to leave a gaming group as there are gamers leaving gaming groups.
Through no fault of their own. A lot of times they have to leave, or suddenly something happens that the gaming party is not together anymore.
Right. Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do?
Well, actually, one more question. How much time do you let pass before you say that a will happened? So it's like the Bilbo Baggins effect. He went off to adventure, and after a certain point, they assumed him dead.
That's right.
So in real life, if you go off to adventure, how long before your characters their wills are put through?
Yeah. I think as long as it takes the rest of the gaming group to be like, whatever happened to that character?
Whenever is it? Yeah, that's really true, because it's like a feeling. You get this feeling like I don't think so and so's coming back.
Well, in the old days, the old rules was you come back to the tavern. And since this is the Dwarven Tavern, we're going to come up with some answers on how long it should be. Because it used to be when you went out on an adventure, you came back to the tavern, and if you made it back or didn't make it back, then you would start back out again. to another point. That's kind of how a lot of games used to be played years ago. And then sometimes people would end up in dungeon crawls never to be heard of or seen from. And suddenly...
And we never heard from him again.
So many people have gone in and no one came back.
Right, and then we'd
Until
send out
they came
another
back.
party after them, and they didn't come back. And they'd send out another party. And then soon, there was haunted things that should be retained back or...
Like, didn't that wraith look just like
So-and-so?
Phlasmo the Unlucky?
And he's just standing
Phlasmo the Unlucky!
And he's
New
just
character.
standing there
And he's saying, like,
locked
yeah, that was me.
where he was last left
Right.
by his gaming party.
So I don't think there should be a set time limit, like 5 gaming sessions or
5 years.
5 years or whatever.
Well, because the people playing the game could just be like, a dude is immediately an asshole and they have to boot him out and never talk to him again, but he had a really important character.
I can
That's-
name
that's
a few
true.
characters of our own that happened like that.
Yeah.
Just like that. So I think that it should be. It shouldn't just be the dungeon master's consensus. I think it should be a whole good, because we're actually kind of metagaming at this point, because the person would be there, the character would be there, because when last we left our hardy adventurers, they were all there.
Yeah.
So the character itself would be there, but the player's not. So it's
you don't
really kind of a
just-
metagame thing.
Yeah, you don't just continue dividing the experience points, assuming this person is fighting when no one is there to roll for them.
Right.
Yeah.
You
But
have
also, there is an inheritance as well. Because if a person is supposed to get... Okay, you killed the dragon, but the person isn't there to receive the points, doesn't mean that they didn't get their points. They could still get their points, and their heirs may inherit. Because some people...
That's where the will comes in. Cause it's
Right.
Okay, I guess that's the next question. What is in a will? Does that include experience points? Because
I would say
that is a good
absolutely not.
absolutely not.
Absolutely not, because, well,
Why? Would they be
that's
copyrighted
a good question.
infringement? Would they
No,
be copyright
no,
infringement?
It would not be
Because we-
copyright.
Sorry, you
assume-
can't have those.
We assume that gold and weapons, or sometimes not even weapons, are in a will. So experience points as a commodity in the game, in many games, what happens?
Okay, well let's take Phlasmo the Unlucky as an example.
He's
Okay,
standing there.
Here
and
he
he's
is.
never moved again.
right there he is. He's completely coated in gear and magic,
Yeah.
and he's killed by a wraith, or the player just decides to never come
The
back.
player is killed by a
The
wraith.
player is killed by a wraith,
Uh,
which may have happened at some point. There were some players
That could.
Poor
I-
Phlasmo.
Poor Phlasmo.
R.I.P.
And his player Bob.
And his player, Bob the Unluckier. Bob One Roller.
Oh. Bob won session.
Bob One Session. Okay, so this character is gone, effectively dead for whatever reason. Maybe he's frozen in time or whatever. So his gear is possibly there.
I think the important thing to mention is that these are games where the player has stopped coming, but the party and the campaign has continued.
Party is, yeah, if he's out by himself and the gear is left low or whatever,
Yeah.
that's up for anybody. You can see somebody in a tavern saying, "Oh, I found this sword out in the woods," and it's like, that's Phlasmo's sword. Why? Because it's dull. And it has no point. It's broken.
swing it. Trust us on this one.
round.
We'll buy you a drink.
He wanted to have a sword made, so he put spikes on the handle. So
See, that's still his hand.
Phlasmo the Unwise. He had many names, Phlasmo. But yeah, if it's with a party, then his gear and his actual body, provided he didn't die, but just the player just stopped, would all be there to be collected by the other players. And then that comes to a point where, is this player ransacked by the other players, or is there an executor?
I think what should happen is I think the executor over any player's character sheets If they do not show up, and if the dungeon master is holding them, I think that it should be the dungeon master because
So
he's
a
holding the
stipulation.
sheets.
A small point is that the will is written by the player.
Yeah.
This isn't someone who disappeared and, randomly. I mean, if he disappeared randomly, then these would just be house rules.
The character
But
will
this
is
is
something you
something
read
where-
before the game really even started.
Yeah, the player, the individual who has the character says that if I can't come back, then, or something happens to them and they say, you can take care of my character, then I would assume that the DM out of game would say, these things are
Right.
Yeah, because you could make him or her an NPC character, but that's only going to go for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you start losing the
Because
essence.
NPCs usually die.
Well, sometimes they become epic heroes. But the point is, eventually, they lose their personality that's being put into them.
Well,
So-
this is a very interesting thing because we were just talking about how it's more than just the gold that needs to get divided up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can discuss about the experience points which are awarded in game. But we're also talking about the character itself.
Yeah.
You can leave the character to someone, to
Yeah.
another player.
That's what I was going to bring up.
And
That is a
so
very
out
valid.
of game, an out of game will and an in game will.
And
You could
in-game
you could will yourself to be like, okay, if I don't show up for a gaming session, Lyric plays my character.
You'll be nice to him, won't you?
My
That is
character's
a very good, and again, that's another metagame point where someone just takes up where that player left off, so the character can keep going.
Obviously, be someone you trust.
So yeah, it would have to be.
His personality did a 180. He was cursed and then.
Or you
Yeah.
get him to a point in the campaign where he can come back to the tavern.
Right.
And-
You can
and-
always-
The Bilbo Baggins effect. Sometimes you show back up unexpected.
yeah,
Right.
it's like,
They're running off with your spoons, and you're like, wait.
Yeah.
that's my duvet. And Krog the Barbarian, that's my duvet.
Not quite the.
Not quite the thing. But
Why wouldn't they seriously, they like soft stuff.
the barbarian would appreciate it probably more than a pampered person.
Yeah.
So, okay, get your barbarians down pillows and.
Duvet, make sure you take good care of them.
But the
They're probably in board,
the one point
board.
is that one point is that if the player leaves the game and is probably never going to come back, then you have the option as the dungeon master to say, well, that character dies. You may want to make copies of the character sheet before everybody leaves if you want to go that route. Make a copy of character sheets.
Yeah. Or just scan them.
Or right. That's,
So
yeah.
is cloning? I mean,
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't actually be cloning. It would be more like reality separated when the player left. He took his character with him, and he's going wherever, or she, going wherever and doing whatever with that character. And the other part of reality where the universe actually split is that character is still here being played by someone else. They can never reconverge. Because if that player decides he
it'll
wants
be
to
a
come
paradox.
back, it would be. If that person decides they want to come back and rejoin the game,
They would have different experience points.
they would have
No one
different
else
experience
under
points, different things, and that. So it could never be allowed to happen. At
They
least in
could
my
never
opinion.
become one person again, but they could probably play side by side and have a really interesting.
Potentially. So you might want to consider renaming the character that left. So they.
So that
Might
would be
turn out to be cousins or brothers or uncles.
Yeah.
And
or
my
well,
long lost twin. My long lost twin.
I knew I'd find
What
him.
about my face?
But there's also the DNA theory where, eventually the same DNA sequence will come back up again, and whoa, they're the same DNA sequence.
Perhaps if you're playing a sci-fi game.
Yeah, sci-fi.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
When it's a
Yeah.
sci-fi game, all these rules
Well,
go
All bets are
flying
off.
out.
Sci-fi game.
Quantum entanglement make things
And it's like, that's not the real me. I'm the real me. That kind of thing.
right.
And there's no real
That's
me
my
on the
clone.
middle.
Well, in a fantasy game,
In a fantasy
all of
game,
these
there
things
are
need-
Well, in a
spells.
fantasy game, it is magic. In a sci-fi game, it is science.
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 So, but the point about the point that you had about letting someone take over is a very valid point, and so the will is both, as you said, both in game and out of game. In any contingency,
it can be dealt with smoothly out of game by the players, and the characters will never take that into account. Or it can be done in game, where you actually have this player, this character disappear or die, and it's role played through with an NPC executor.
Right.
And as all handled on the table.
And I think each game master, keeper, dungeon person, whatever you want to call them.
They're all them terms.
All them terms.
Dungeon keeper.
I think it would be. It comes to a point when they know that whether it's a dungeon crawl or it's a sci-fi campaign, eventually there's going to come a point when that person it's going to be necessary for them, and when that point comes that they're not going to be there and it is known that they aren't coming back, I think that is when the will go into effect. And my personal vote would be roll the dice, and that would be fair enough time waited to
also that's a very good point. What I would do as a dungeon master is say, okay, I've got you, let's say you 4 have characters in a new campaign. Let's say, if you can't be here on a temporary basis, who would you want to take over your character, because we're meeting every Friday or whatever. And then everyone could assign someone else to take over their character, someone they trusted or whatever, to do a good thing, to do good things with your character.
Like, so you could do it like, you could say, okay.
That's more like power of attorney.
Okay.
Sure. Dice, leave them alone.
Here's my dice, you can...
Okay, 6.
No,
6.
Don't touch my dice.
So it could be 6 sessions, 6 intervals, 6 moves, because some
6 months.
6 months,
Weeks.
6 years. That's really, you guys are really loving your campaign.
I know. I have a friend who we played. I think the last time we played was about 30 years ago, and he still considers all of the campaigns we were in to be still going, just waiting for us all to get back together again.
Yeah. Good friends.
We won't tell him. We won't tell him.
Yeah, very patient.
But and that's okay if it's just between you and him, and that. But if it's with everybody else, sometimes 30 years.
As far as I know, all of us that
happen.
were playing that campaign are still alive, so it is possible that we could all get back together.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd be willing.
Well,
No
just
pun intended.
whip the characters out and we'll be done.
Willing.
And then there's a point in time when your characters do age to a point that they will pass on in game. And that will be another time when the will come into play, that you will need a will.
Yeah.
Will.
It all depends how long it takes for the will to
Buffalo.
enact.
Buffalo.
So
Buffalo,
I would say,
Buffalo.
it would come to a point for the game master to say, okay, it is time. And then there would be
maybe take a vote.
Take a vote, and then I would say roll to see how long, that would be per your gaming, and then enact the will.
Right. And say, all right, I'd like to bring up a vote. Do we all think that Greedock, the procrastinant, will ever come back? And everybody be like, yay or nay?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
Nay. So
he's known for his procrastinance.
Yeah. So we can do one of 2 things. We have someone take over him as a character, or leave him behind, or whatever. Or if he is dead,
I'd probably sign up to Nulgop the Fortunate.
What?
Milgop the Unfortunate?
Nulgop the
Nulgop.
Fortunate.
I was going to go Dirk the Unstoppable.
Dirk the Unstoppable!
So, see, that's something else. Is there's always a thief in the campaign, and if I were playing a thief, I would see this as a good opportunity to beat everybody. While everybody's off at the funeral, I would be going through the goods.
Well, this brings up another thing.
As a thief.
The many ways that this can be brought into the campaign. You can have drama that this character was murdered in the middle of the night. And it's like, which character did it? Who has the stuff? It was like, do you have to play vengeance? And...
I can't metagame, but I'd blame her immediately.
I didn't lie.
Yes, you did.
Not yet.
Well, you did. I know you
Just
did.
wait for it.
It's your fault.
Not my fault. You did it. First person blame, they did it.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
You are very suspicious.
By default.
Generally. Because you're a good person in the outside world. You like to play those
Vicious,
So-
cunning.
skeevy, grungy,
Let's just throw adjectives out there.
skeevy, grungy.
So
Anyway.
in addition to playing out a murder mystery in game or just handing the character over, how else could it be done?
Well, there's so many ways that you can handle it. The character could just disappear in the night.
Which that's
You could also have
that's
be-
the most
Because
mystery.
right,
Yeah.
because there are so many things that prey on the unsuspecting when they sleep in their camps. Invisible stalkers, just freaking
Anything.
goblins, man.
Goblins! Having a 20th level character get killed by goblins in the night would suck.
That would be your new favorite enemy, just because you have
It's like
to.
all of a sudden
Yeah,
all the
you
rangers goes goblins.
Yeah, you're
Just because you have to. I like
just
that
because
reasoning.
you have to.
Yeah.
If your 20th level character gets murdered by a goblin,
Just
a
one.
goblin.
A
A goblin with
singular
an ice
goblin.
pick. It slips it in your character's ear when
While
they're-
he's drunk.
While he's drunk and asleep. And there's
While the
nothing
goblin's
worse.
drunk and asleep?
Nothing worse than waking up dead. I've never done it myself. But
And see, that brings
We're
in
talking
another
about
thing.
fantasy, that's possible.
If your character, if this character then becomes dead, does the will still progress? Because was that a will for life, or was that a will for death, post death? Because
So
Does this
that's
character
actually
still-
two separate things in that case, because the player's will says that my character mysteriously disappears in the night, and you have no idea who did it, and you have to play as if you don't know either, and that's all kinds of exciting and
yeah.
vengeance.
Yeah.
What happened to this character? And
Well, that would be a
But
good
the-
one if they were going to come back just on an undisclosed time that you don't know when your friend is going to come back.
well,
They
that's
walk through
that's
the
a
woods.
player's.
Hi. It's like, where have you been? I have no
I
idea.
fell in a hole.
I fell in a
I got
hole.
I
married
had
on
to
a
play
porch.
through a dungeon to get back here. So
and
that's
that happens. That
That's
happens
the
a lot.
player's will.
Yeah.
So the character, if you know this person has died, or this person is inactive, in game, you would actually have a separate will. So, what kind of things would be in that? I mean, what kind of things? I mean, how do you apportion out the magic items, or
Maybe you.
how would that? I mean, would that even affect the alignment of the other characters?
Well, you would also have, say, this was
That's
a farm
a-
boy. He went off to war. He became a great general, and he had all this stuff. And maybe he wants his little gray-haired mama to have everything back.
It's like none of the characters can have any of the stuff. They actually
Yeah.
have to transport it back home.
Yeah.
And I could see his
Yeah.
little gray-haired mama going, "Oh, Mace of Disruption! I've always wanted one of those." What?
I was about to say she was the right one.
Yeah. She's the right one to get.
They were stealing my chickens.
They were stealing our chickens, and now they're going to pay.
And then suddenly everybody's in a war against chickens.
It's thieves,
Thieves, chicken thieves.
so watch out.
Yeah.
Not that you would steal chickens.
No. I am from the other end of the spectrum
You
where...
steal cattle. The big animal.
You're extremely suspicious.
Yes.
I didn't do it. Yet. I haven't done it
Huh,
yet.
I seem to have lost some of my gold.
I don't need
Um,
your gold. Leave it there on the table.
Well,
I'll be
I
back
think
for
that
it.
I think the main thing though is that it's brought to the table. The will is brought to the table for everyone in the gaming group, so that so no one's surprised by. Well, I've been gone for 6 months. What do you want? How is my character 15th level and has a different name?
Yeah,
That would be
this
confusing.
isn't the party randomly decides. This is something that's set up beforehand as a
Right.
will.
That everybody
as
agrees on.
a real will would actually.
I
be.
mean, and it could just be in passing something simple that says, okay, guys, we're starting this campaign. Heaven forbid anything should happen to you in the real world. This is what we're going to do.
Or, if they
Simple
just
as
get a
that.
job.
Or-
You're like, oh man, it's awful. Like, what happened? I got a job.
I'm
Oh,
so sorry.
sorry.
My condolences.
and he
Oh, I
just happens to
will.
work on gaming night now.
That'd be awful.
So
Legit would be.
role playing it through. I guess it is very important to mention that the will should be character appropriate.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, if you're a monk, there might be a specific rite that has to be overseen by the other party members.
And
Or
that
if you're a paladin, you have to be interred with a specific temple. Or,
Yeah.
if you're a rogue, there might be an entire band of people you owe money that are now after the other players.
Oh God. Good times.
So you have to keep in mind, this can enrich the game. It doesn't have to detract from
It also means too that if you were a monk, then and you needed to be dismembered and fed to the birds, that therefore you're
What freaking monk are you?
Tibet?
Really?
yeah.
They call it a sky burial. Look it up.
That's not cool.
Google.
Google.
they agreed to it beforehand. So.
I'm not dead yet.
So
Shut up. Wow. Wow. The birds are hungry.
So what do you do with this character sheet? Should you? I mean, you could actually ritually take it apart and unfortunately feed it to the birds, which we don't recommend. But it's bad for them. They might.
Some people
Birds
might
are like,
want the
"There's
actual
stats."
character sheet destroyed. Some
Yeah.
people might want it framed and put on the wall, or set up in a place of honor,
Archived. Yeah.
You
That was a great one, and I mean, you can make a little shrine to this character.
I remember Aberon the Destroyer. He had a 25 strength.
Yeah, you could do that too. Now you could have Hall of Heroes like we have at the Dwarven Tavern. We do have people that write in saying about great deaths, and we would pay homage to them on the podcasts that we ran for a while.
Yep.
And people would say so-and-so when we would do a little epic presentation and memorial for them, which is always possible.